attention prayer, and we pray. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praises are due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of this day of judgment in which we now live. The alone do we serve, the alone do we beseech for help. O Allah, guide us on the right path, the path you have bestowed favors, not of those whom your wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray. Amen. All right. Welcome to the word clearing. And as most of you know, we've been on the word auditing. And just as a quick overview, auditing is one of the great misunderstood words in the Nation of Islam, and probably in general, but definitely in the Nation of Islam, since we were introduced to auditing back in 2010. You ask somebody, what they expect from an auditing session, and you get a variety of answers, usually answers that don't really cover the scope of what really auditing is. So we are on auditing. I think we finished the document that's the Scientology words to clear. We finished that one, and now we're in the technical dictionary now, which I think it does repeat the definition from the Scientology words to clear, but we'll just kind of go back over it right quick. All right, auditing. Auditing is the application of Scientology processes and procedures by a trained auditor. And I think that's part of what, if I'm not mistaken, that's part of what it was saying. That's right. And then definition number 2, the action of asking the pre-clear a question which he can understand and answer, getting an answer to that question and acknowledging him for that answer. Auditing gets rid of unwanted barriers that inhibit, stop, or blunt a person's natural ability, as well as gradiently increasing the abilities a person has so that he becomes more able and his survival, happiness, and intelligence increase enormously. Okay, so that's a little bit of an expansion of that second definition, where it said we dealt with the thing about auditing and asking a question. And we even talked about that a little bit earlier today when we were talking about asking a question and the nuts and the bolts, the mechanism, the nuts and bolts of asking a question, the mechanism of asking a question, the anatomy of a question, just looking at this thing from a very microscopic perspective, looking at it very close, clearing the word. So when you ask a person a question, you are directing the attention of that particular person, and it is really a very very interesting thing that you can ask. You can really have control over people sometimes just by asking them a question. You can gain control over them to a degree. Because when you ask somebody a question, if I ask you a question, you generally, unless you just not listening to me, my mind is going to go where you ask me to go. When somebody comes home, uh, 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 you say your children come home or your husband come home or whatever it is, where you been? You ask them where you been, and then the person who you ask the question to, their mind goes right where they been, because you open the door. You open the door for the picture to appear, and this is one reason why, as we talked about earlier, examination and cross-examination in a trial is it's so important, and that carries so much weight. Uh, and this is part of the mechanism of auditing. When you audit somebody, or when you are being audited, they give you uh, uh, a question which can be in the form of a picture. Remember, we're talking about pictures. The whole thing we're talking about here is the mind, and as we are taught, Dianetics is the science of the mind, and this is what we're really trying to get more of, as the scripture says. Let this mind that is in Christ Jesus be also in you. All right. So auditing is the action of asking a pre-clear a question, which, asking him something that he can understand and answer, and getting an answer to that question and acknowledging him for that answer. And of course, in book one auditing, the kind of auditing that we were first introduced to by the minister, the auditor would ask you, the auditor would say, go back to a period where you had pain. And then you follow the instructions. And then so you give the auditor the answer. When you give the auditor the answer, he said, well, is this it? And if that is it, he said, okay, well, go back to the beginning, go back over it again, and contact any additional information or any additional data. And the thing is that auditing, to a degree, is sort of like, it's just like washing a tabletop or something, washing a car. You ask the question, and then you ask the question, and then your answer to the question is just like wiping over the tabletop. And then so the next time you ask the question again, they say, well, go back over it again. You go back over it again. Well, this time you may get something that you didn't get the last time. And each subsequent times you go over it. And so that's why in the auditing process, when you get to a certain point, when you get to where they say it's flat, which means that you've wiped all over the table, you got all of the dirt off and everything, it's no point to keep on washing a table or wiping off the table. You've already got all of the grime off of it. And so that's when you go to a question. You go to another question, which the answer may contain some dirt or some grime, so to speak. And so you go over that. And as you go over these answers, what you are effectively doing is that you are confronting, you're confronting what we call charge, or confronting negative emotions that you might have about this particular incident that you were asked about and that you are recalling. So that's the basic idea of auditing as we know it in the Nation of Islam. Now, so it says that getting an answer to a question and being acknowledged for that answer. Very good. And we were talking about the value of the acknowledgement, and that auditing sessions often will go better when you have a good auditor. A good auditor will acknowledge the PC or the pre-clear, the person being audited, when he will acknowledge that particular person, acknowledge that answer, and then you can keep going. It says that auditing gets rid of unwanted barriers that inhibit, stop, or blunt a person's natural abilities, as well as gradiently increasing the abilities a person has so that he becomes more able and his survival, happiness, and intelligence increase enormously. So, of course, this is what we want, you know. Now, what we do in STW, our class that we had earlier, is that that is a form of auditing. We will, once we get through with this main definition of auditing, I will explain a little bit more how that is auditing as well. So it says it gets rid of unwanted barriers, because just recalling or recounting situations or incidents that have charge, that have negative implications in your mind, just by revisiting these particular things, you discover barriers sometimes. And that's the whole thing, as we were saying about auditing last week, that auditing, it basically, you put everything on the table. Auditing is sort of like a taking of inventory. It's laying things out to get a certain perspective, maybe over the whole thing. And it's sort of like a technician, an electronics technician. If you take your TV to the shop, and the technician, he looks, the technician is sort of like the auditor. And so what the auditor does, the auditor looks at the whole thing. He looks at the schematic diagram, and is able to look at it and determine by looking at it what the possible cause of the problem may be. So the auditing, when you put everything out to where it can be seen, when you talk about these particular things, oftentimes the unwanted barriers that inhibit, stop, or blunt your natural abilities, it is exposed. You see, it's exposed. And then when you see it, and then sometimes you may have what they call a cognition. A cognition is just a realization, because sometimes things can be bothering you unwittingly or unknowingly. You may not really be aware of the fact that these certain things are bothering you until you begin to talk about it. And then you realize, oh, that's what that was. And in Scientology auditing, which is somewhat different from Dianetic auditing, and we'll go into that as well. In Scientology auditing, a big win or a big positive or part of the outcome that is desired is that you have a cognition, is that it makes you aware of something that's been there the whole while, but you were not aware of it. And sometimes this is a barrier, okay? So it gets rid of unwanted barriers that inhibit, stop, or blunt a person's natural ability, as well as gradiently increasing the abilities a person has so that he becomes more able, and his survival, happiness, and intelligence increase enormously. Okay, so you got it gradiently increases your ability. It increases your ability, really, a lot of times, to tolerate things. When you get an understanding really of what auditing is, you to get an understanding of what auditing is, you really need to have a working knowledge of the basics or the fundamentals of the mind, as Mr. Hubbard have outlined it to us. Now, his outline is congruent with what we study in the Bible, in the Quran. At least I have not found anything that really contradicts or directly contradicts. Mr. Hubbard basically gives us the idea that you have your mind, and then your mind is basically a repository of pictures, of facsimiles. And as we learn in Handbook for Pre-Clears, a facsimile is just a copy of experience. And when I say a copy, it's just a replication, or it's a file in your mind that is a copy of something that happened to you or something that you experienced. If you went to the store if you went to the grocery store to get a gallon of milk or something like that, and then you remember going to the grocery store and you remember standing at the checkout line and paying the money, putting it in the bag, going back to your car. All of this represents a facsimile. A facsimile is a recording that takes a place in real time with your experience. And as Mr. Hubbard says, that you have been actually recording facsimiles ever since you were born. From the day that you're a baby coming out the mother's womb, you're recording all of that. Now, when you come out of the womb, you may not understand exactly what's going on, but just as sure, these facsimiles, these recordings still exist in your mind. And if you are able to revisit these facsimiles, you can revisit these facsimiles with the knowledge that you have now. They have people that go all the way back to their early childhood before maybe even they could speak, but the speech is in the facsimile. So you can actually go back to that particular time when you couldn't speak, and you can hear. If you return to that facsimile and hear the words, you can experience the words that you did not understand when the thing first happened. And he was saying that it's a difference between re-experiencing facsimiles, which in book 1, the Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, is referred to as returning. So you have memories and then you have returning. When you got remembering something, it's sort of more of a surface type thing where you remember, you putting certain elements back together that's connected with the past. But when you go through the process of what Mr. Hubbard calls returning, you actually, your mind, your conscious, your attention actually goes back into the actual file that is in your mind, and you can re-experience this thing again, along with all of the perceptics, the sight, the sound, the touch, the smell, the temperature. All of these things are really recorded in your mind. You see? Go ahead, Belinda.
I'm rusty on my book 1. Prenatal engrams or whatever. So our facsimiles.
Absolutely.
Prenatal facsimiles.
Absolutely. That's what a prenatal and engram is, a facsimile. So this is what we're getting at when we are auditing. We get it. A facsimile is the picture. And see, this whole thing of auditing is really designed to give us a perspective on these pictures, because sometimes if the picture has got pain in it, then the mind sort of blows a fuse, and then the picture is not put in a place where it can serve you best. It gets put into what we call the reactive bank. And then this particular picture of facsimile, it can be detrimental, because when you get close to situations that approximate the contents of the facsimile, then if there was fear in there, then you begin to get afraid. And sometimes you don't know why you feel afraid. And sometimes you go into a situation where you may feel some anger. You don't understand why you feel anger. You don't understand why you feel resentment and many of the lower emotions. And this is one reason why I strongly suggest that we deal with the emotional tone scale, because that's really what these sessions are about. It's dealing with the supreme wisdom. Of course, we're dealing with the supreme wisdom, but we really dealing with, we focusing really on Mr. Hubbard's technology, because you already know the supreme wisdom. You already know that. But what you don't know, and I mean, when I say you, I mean we as in general, what we don't know is this technology. We just learning this technology. So we put an emphasis on being able to apply this technology to the supreme wisdom, and then we're able to get more understanding out of our past, and we can sort of clean up these areas of our memory that disturb us. You know how it is. Some people can tell you something, or direct ask you a question, and then that, and you know how people say, don't go there, and because you don't want to go to a place where you may be affected negatively. Somebody's hand was up right before yours. Why, dude?
Sister Denise, I believe.
Yeah, she left, I believe. Okay, well, she's gone. Go ahead, brother.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
When you said Mr. Hubbard's technology, a spark of thought flew through me from both the perspective of our teachings, where the words of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, that the Caucasian white man is, and I'm paraphrasing, an international snooper, or that I know the word snooper is used. I don't know if it's universal or international, but I recall him being categorized as a snooper. And in asking questions, it made me think about why whites always want to ask us questions that probe where we are, and somewhat of an affinity for language. I'm not a lawyer, but we delve into language because of its connection to the meta. Are the main ones that I've learned are who, what, when, where, why, and how. But those main 6 question words really probe into technology, is where our mind and thoughts are. So that just occurred to me.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to share it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's valuable. That's valuable, because what it does, it shines light on the thing that we were just talking about questions, and then so that's what that when the white man get around you, he trying to audit you to see what's going on, to know if you are a threat to him. Yeah, you ever notice that? You know, you can be on the plane sitting next to some person that you don't even know, some
Right.
Caucasian person. Black folks don't never ask you what you read.
Mm,
White
mm.
folks are always asking, yo, what you reading? And you know what I mean? And
Yes,
you know,
sir.
they just and then when you said the thing about snooping, well, snooping is sort of a negative auditing type of thing. You know what I mean? It's a negative perspective of asking a question and trying to get an answer. See, because that's what he's doing when he's snooping. You know, he's wondering what's going on. He's trying to answer a question that he didn't ask because he didn't want you to know that he was snooping. But the same thing is happening. Go ahead, Sister Anya.
Wow.
Sister Denise is back on if you
Oh, okay, yeah,
want
yeah,
her to go
Sister.
first.
You wanted to you had something to say, Sister Denise? Sister Denise. All right, go ahead on, Sister Anya.
Um, when you mentioned the emotions, I was listening to a little video, and this guy was given his understanding and experience with different dimensions. And he's one of these people that from a child was able to, well, I'll just say had, gifts. How some people are just have different types of gifts. Some people see, like colors around people, and some people see other things. So he was giving his explanation of his experience with these different dimensions. And he mentioned emotions. He kept mentioning emotions. And he explained that the emotions, he didn't see, it wasn't that he heard the words, and he didn't see people and things first. What he felt was the emotions first, and the emotions helped him explain the culture, who the people were, and what the conversations and the thoughts were. But he just expressly, because he said it twice, that he said it wasn't these the other things that he picked up on first, it was the emotions, and the emotions helped him understand what was going on in that dimension. So I just thought that that was very interesting, in reference to what you said earlier about emotions.
Okay. Yeah. Well, emotions, that's a whole nother that's a whole nother class that we really need to understand, because when we really understand emotions in depth, we can extract more from the study guide, Rising Above Emotion into the Thinking of God, because emotion is something that is very, very prevalent in our day-to-day life, and even in our thinking, because for every thought that you have, there's an emotion. Thoughts give rise to emotions, and then the emotion give rise to actions. Praise be to Allah. Okay, so I'm trying to think, what was I saying? Where did I leave off? Yeah, I know. We were talking about the facsimiles, and we were talking about the fundamentals of the mind, when you have the reactive mind and the let me see if I can. I had a PowerPoint. Because I think you just really have to, understand these things. Bear with me, please, believers.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, we're talking about the human mind. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this screen. Okay, can everybody see that?
I can. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So you got the human mind. The mind is the interface between you and the physical universe. When I say you, see, you are not your mind. Your mind is just the book that you write on to record what has happened in the past and what is happening in the future. Excuse me, what happens at present, because you got the past and then you got the present. You don't have the future because the future ain't here yet. And that's one reason why the emphasis in Dianetics is to get you in the present time, because present time, that is where the action is. So you have the analytical mind, which is your thinking mind. You're thinking the present time mind, with, you're thinking you're solving problems and so forth. And then you have your reactive mind, which is a stimulus response mind, things that you react to. And actually you have, I don't have it written there, you have just your standard subconscious mind, just, you have memories that just, just like I went to a walk, on a walk in the park, that doesn't really bother me. I mean, in other words, it's just a regular memory, as opposed to I went on a walk in the park and I got bitten by a rattlesnake. Then that experience is gonna be put into your reactive mind. And so when I go back to the park, I'm not thinking now. I'm reactive. You see. All right. So it says, so you find yourself either thinking or reacting. And then so you are not your mind, and then the mind is not your brain. We talked about that a while back too. So the brain is like the electrical panel in your house, or it's like better put, it's more like a switchboard. Okay. And the mind feeds and instructs the brain. So you have the mind, which, your present time thinking, or something that you may be reacting to. And this is why we have the psychosomatic ills, which Mr. Hubbard says that 70% of the ills that we have are psychosomatic illness. It's things that are in unresolved conflicts, unresolved issues in the mind, or painful things that are in the mind. When you get these painful pictures, and then these painful pictures manifest themselves in the body. Remember, we talked about this morning, we're talking about faith, and faith, the basis of faith being a picture, you see. And then this picture manifests itself. If you got faith, then it energizes this picture, and it forces or impinges this picture on the universe. So the same thing in your mind, you got these negative pictures, and then these pictures impose and impinge themselves on your body, and then you get sickness and disease. All right? Any questions? All right, now we just talked about facsimile. Facsimile is a mental image picture. Now we noticed the minister was talking a lot about pictures. If you listen, he was talking about pictures on that Swan song. He was talking about the play that he had wrote, where he had a homosexual man and had another woman that was a prostitute. They were playing these roles, but to play these roles, you had to conjure up these mental image pictures. The man had to imagine himself being a homosexual. The woman had to imagine herself being a prostitute. Well, the subconscious mind don't know the difference. You know, if you get the picture in your mind, the mind is so powerful, and you get the picture in your mind of a homosexual, you play the part and everybody get a standing ovation, and you come back home, and then this doggone picture is still in your doggone mind, and the picture, the power of the picture, it's trying to impinge itself on your personality. And that's why the messenger was saying that you got to be careful with that, because these pictures, if you put these pictures in the minds of the people that was playing in this play, the picture might cause them to reconnect with some earlier incident, which is what we're talking about. The next thing, which would be a lock. So you got a lock. If you see the guy, see what we got here. You got a mental image picture, and then that's so you can see the boy he's looking at the universe, and his mind is taking the picture. All right. Then you go to what he called a lock. Okay, a lock. Now he sees that. He looks at this in this window, see these this baseball bat, and you see up above his head, he's feeling some pain there. And you look and see the mental image picture of him feeling the pain. And so this picture is connected to an engram, which is a heavy mental picture. It's a mental picture that has pain and unconsciousness in it by definition. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We see it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have so this is a lock. And Mr. Hubbard says that most of your aberration is in what he calls locks and secondaries. So you got a lock here, and then you go secondary is a painful emotion engram. So this guy right here, he just lost his balloon. So whenever you have a loss, you know the feeling that you get when you lose something. You get home and then you look for your wallet, and then you discover you have lost your wallet. You know what I'm saying? You go to work, and then the boss calls you in the office and say, I'm gonna have to let you go. You lost your job. You know what I mean? Your wife, she tell you, well, I'm fed up, I'm leaving. So you lost your wife. You losing things. So that means you have, because see, whatever you possess, the things that you possess, these are things that you have gathered. These are things that you have collected because they have some survival. They have survival value to you. So when you lose them, then you get a sense, or you get a mental picture of insecurity because you have lost something that you have collected that gives you security. And this is part of what happens when you catch a cold or even coronavirus, is that when you lose something, if you lose something, then it puts a chink in your armor because you feel a little, because you have the picture of being less secure, you are in fact, because of that picture, made a little less secure. Does that make sense? Your shield of protection to a big degree is mental. It is a picture that you place. You have a shield that is protecting you, but then there is a certain confidence that you have in this particular shield. So when this shield is breached in any way, then you feel vulnerable. You begin to entertain or even make up pictures, you follow what I'm saying, of vulnerability. And then when you get those pictures, what does it say? As a man thinketh, so is he. See? All right, then you have the next one, an engram. Now, secondary, as going back right quick, a secondary is also referred to as a painful emotion engram. I have to excuse myself for just a minute. Can someone just lead a quick discussion till I get back? I ain't gonna be but a couple of minutes about any of the either the secondary or the lot or the mental image picture. Anything you want to discuss on that till I get back. I'll be right back. By Allah. Not everybody at once.
Well, family, this is Brother Wadu. I'll jump out there and then we can cross-reference it to Brother Bateen when he returns. But as I looked at the previous picture of Locke and the character having a lock against the baseball bat because of the incident of being hit with it by someone, then when we came to this secondary, I imagine that that person that had the lock against the baseball bat may have a secondary toward the individual that actually hit them with the bat that gave them the lock. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make a lot of
Yes,
sense.
sir.
What do I do?
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Yes,
All
sir.
praises due to Allah.
Good
So
observation. Yes.
as a painful emotion engram connected to the person behind the bat, which is the actual lock in that image. So that was just something that occurred to me.
A question
Yes, sir.
about it. So is there
Go
like,
ahead. Go ahead.
so is there a loss with that person? I'm trying to connect because I thought the secondary was a loss or fear of a loss. Somebody help me
Well,
out.
I heard
Amen.
I'm sorry, someone else. I was just going to say, I heard your husband say that the emotion of losing something was the pain that connected to the engram. And with the previous picture in connection, if there's a connection with the lock and the secondary, then I would say the loss, if we wanted to extrapolate it out, would occur from whatever maybe affinity that they had
I was gonna
with
say
that
that.
person,
Mhm.
or reality, any of that break from the ARC may be the loss, and that could be painful because assumingly that person was close enough to that person to swing the bat. Now it could have been a stranger, but it could have been someone that they knew that actually hit them with the bat. But it's hard to, kind of extrapolate out those details. I guess that would be a individual case kind of a dynamic, maybe.
Well, what's happening with the lock? The lock is sort of like a key in. The lock sort of keys you in. The lock is really, it's really an analytical moment that aligns with the contents of a secondary or an engram, you see. And so that's the thing about a lock. A lock is just, anything that reminds you of the contents of an engram, and it just it re-stimulates the memory, re-stimulates you returning or experiencing the engram. Go ahead. So, thank you, Brother Wadu. Sister Denise, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I had an emergency. Okay, the psychosomatic illness when you're auditing someone, and I was wondering. I want to ask you, how could you tell that like they in pain, and then let's go to the point of pain or something like that. Is it what they say to you that you can see that they in pain, or how can you find out where you know that that's what you have to go back to? Is it what they say? Is it what they're talking about and the expression on their faces? I'm saying for the auditor.
Yeah. Where do you start from? Well, when you're going into an auditing session, well then there's a thing we call case inventory.
Oh.
Where you go over, you talk to the person that is to be audited, and then you go over these significant incidents in their life, and generally in book one they just give you a very general question. They say, well, go back to that period of pain. So and then the PC chooses, I guess according to his or her being comfortable with going to this or that particular incident, and then you go to that particular you go to that incident, and then you run it. When I say run it, I mean recount it, put it out on, you basically putting it out on the table, and then you just kind of go over it with a fine tooth comb, and what one just said, you go over, you say, well, okay, I was, the returning, when you say, when the person is returning, they go over it exactly as though they were there. They say, well, I'm at home and I hear a knock on the door. And then I get up and I answer the door. And then that was my uncle standing there with a baseball bat. And he was getting ready to hit me. And then he took a swing and hit me on my knee. And then so I said, oh, okay. What do you see? I'm looking at the lights flashing out as I fall to the ground. What do you hear? I hear the children playing out in the yard or so and so. And And so what you do is you try to get all of the perceptics. You ask the PC all of the different things. So what you get him or her to recall all of the different perceptics, and the more perceptics they are able to recall, it puts them right smack back in the middle where they are re-experiencing the incident, as opposed to remembering is sort of a lighter, more on the surface type of thing, where you just kind of trying to put little elements together to kind of see it. But the returning that's a whole different thing. So so there's so you
Yes, sir.
yeah you ask the PC what to, you let them choose it. But what we have really began to do, and what we were doing with Handbook for Pre-Clears, is that we took this Mr. Hubbard. He came up with these different lists of things and incidents in everybody's lives that were most likely to be causing aberration. He said most of your aberrations are locked are tied up in locks and secondaries, and not engrams. See, in the nation, we've been fishing for engrams, but most of the problem that we have, most of the N theta, they call it, is locked up and is tied up in locks and secondaries. And that has to be, according to what he's talking about, that has to be part of the reason why many people did not really benefit a lot from auditing. Is because we were fishing, we were fishing for sharks, but it was the piranhas that was eating us up. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And that would explain why, when you're talking about it, and and it's painful, that there's some tears in that. And then after you get it out, now I see why, people cry, because it's painful and it hurts. And
that's right.
And then you release that. And then even though it's the auditing process is over, when you started, that pain was so great. And then after I don't know, I had a real good ugly cry. I mean, it was a real good cry. But after I got all of that out, I felt like a new person, because that was a lock, and somebody came along and they would had the the rusty locks and stuff. That's what I'm thinking about. And when they unlocked that pain, oh my God, I was like, whoa. Yes, sir. So I see exactly what you're saying in reference to that the locks, going towards the lock and secondary, to deal with that. And that was a lesson my husband just gave people, that you got a pile of dirt and it's like a hill. And it's like, well, how do I get that pile of dirt, the little pile, down? And he was saying how you have to massage it, and that's what an auditor does, and what it does when you keep going back over. And it's like, oh yeah, now I can tell you about it, that I don't need the Kleenex now.
Yeah, that's right. Because you keep
now
on.
I'm cool. I'm cool now. I was a wreck in the beginning. I'm cool now. Yeah, let's talk about it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Praise be to Allah.
Thank you, beloved. Thank you.
You're welcome, sister. Brother Montgomery.
Yes, sir. Could you go back to that other picture that had the connection of things? I want to ask you a question. Yes, that one. Those are uh, incidents that you see there. Some of them are blank and don't have anything on them. I'm
Mhm.
looking at them like file cards.
Right.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what else is going on there? How one in the middle doesn't have anything on it, or it just isn't labeled, and how could you
Right.
elaborate on that?
I think that is put, the blank things are put there to illustrate that it is part of a file system, that this incident is filed away. Your mind files incidents away in an organized fashion. See, and so
Mm,
in that file cabinet, you got, you know, when you see the boy looking at in the window of the sports shop, then that file, that as soon as you look at it, it becomes a file, right? All right, and then
right,
so as your mind, we call it in book one, as the file clerk files this particular file, it does it in a very organized way, in that it files it in a similar uh, in a similar file cabinet, so to speak, as, in other words, when you see the bat, you see that bat. All right, so now that bat is reminding him of when somebody used a bat. It wasn't the same bat, but it was but somebody used a bat that obviously that hit him. You follow what I'm saying? So all of those, we talked about earlier, we talked about the unit facsimile of Farrakhan. Everything that you've ever experienced about Farrakhan is in one file, a unit file, a unit facsimile. So the same thing, he's got a unit facsimile on bats. So he sees that bat, and then in that file cabinet of bats, it brings up a similar incident, which happens to have a bat, and then so he it keys in, it re-stimulates that engram. Does that make sense? And I think that
yes,
the blank cards, I think, are just there to illustrate that it is a file system. It is a systematic filing process of the mind. The mind files things in similarities, and this is one reason why it was saying that auditing helps to increase your intelligence, because what happens is that when you see that bat, then you get all emotional, and then your emotional disposition then prevents you from seeing the difference between that bat and when you got hit with a bat. Because when you got hit with the bat, that was then, but this is now you looking at a sports shop window now. You're not getting hit by the bat. So the intelligence aspect of it is that, you know, the intelligent perspective is that, well, that happened then, this is happening now. But since since the whole bat thing is found in a very painful area of your mind, then it's just hard for you to make the differentiations, and then it keys the incident back in your mind. I hope that makes sense.
so there's no such thing as an Ingram bank where everything in the file is just engrams. I mean,
Uh, not per se, but in other words, your reactive mind has all of your engrams, but see, even your engrams are filed in an organized fashion. In other words, your engram, your engram is filed, and it is still, there's a chain, you know, of similar incidents. If you got an engram, it is found. It's 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 filed according to similarity. So if there's another painful incident, physical pain, that has a similar nature, then those engrams would be found alike, but not just because they're engrams. All of the engrams, they do not, in other words, they do not really just all go into one category. I think that's what you're asking, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does that make sense though?
Right. Is it well? Is that helped me understand that there are some pleasure moments in some of those cards, some of those files, so facsimiles. Some of them can be pleasure moments.
Not in this case of this picture.
Okay.
Not in this, because see the lock is strictly something that re-stimulates an engram. Pleasure moments, you're not going to have a pleasure moment that's really going to re-stimulate an engram. The pleasure moment take you away from the engram, and that's one reason why at the end of the session we always ask that you get a pleasure moment. Even with STW, if you notice, Sister Jacqueline, the last question she asked, she said, find a pleasurable object near you now, So that's not the pleasure moment are not, see, that's a separate file cabinet from the reactive mind. The reactive mind is one file, one set of files, and then your analytical or your standard bank, as Brother Lukeman says, is another file cabinet altogether.
Yes, sir. That's clear. That's clear.
Okay. All right. So we at that time, but we got some more hands. We're gonna get everybody's hand. Go ahead on, Brother Wadu.
Yes, sir. Very quickly, I was listening and looking at the schematic, or as I look at it, as a schematic, and from a medical and anatomical perspective, what I'm hearing is actually the creation or the making of the engram or memory, as we've heard the different terms of what the brain is composed of for memory and the different locations that we've identified for housing emotion, such as the hippocampus or the amygdala. We've heard those terms. And so as I look at this schematic and your explanation for Brother Montgomery, it seems to be giving a schematic of how those areas or engrams are being made and thus filed in those various aspects of our brain, whether it be the hippocampus or the amygdala or the midbrain or wherever it's going. And with that, my train of thought went away. So I'll leave it at that. But that's right. Something that stood out.
Let me just say this, that the filing is not really so much with the brain. The filing is not so much with the brain. The filing is in the mind. The mind affects, eventually affects the brain, but the filing of the incident is in the mind. And so just like if you had a car accident, and then you hit a car and then you bump your head on the steering or something like that. All right, and then say 12 years later, you somebody T-bones you or something like that. Well, then those engrams are gonna be stored in similar places. You follow what I'm saying? And brother Montgomery's question was that is all engrams, just all together. And I'm saying they all are in the reactive mind, but then they are in different file cabinets based on the similarity of the incidents that happened there.
Yes, sir. And we're in agreement with that. And I'm just offering that, and thank you for bringing back my thought that with every engram that's formed, maybe a different set of circumstances that file those engrams into their own unique category within the reactive mind
Yeah.
occurred. When I got bit by the dog, it wasn't the same time it wasn't the same circumstances when I fell off my bike, but yet both of them may have created an engram that got filed individually, but within the same reactive bank.
Right.
And the emotions that surrounded each is where I was kind of saying that the brain being that medium between the mind and the physical world and the body, or the somatics, certain aspects of the brain are activated based on certain emotions and thoughts from the mind into those areas of the physical brain.
Yeah. I just don't want to get that far into that. That's the
Yes,
the only
sir.
thing of
Yes,
that. We're not, because that's really another conversation.
Yes, sir.
What we're really trying to do is just really trying to establish a good, solid understanding, of the mind. Not that what you're saying is not valuable. We all know that it is valuable, but we just want to stick to this, stick with that basic fundamental conversation of the mind. Because see, when you start talking about the brain and all that stuff, then then you're branching off into another level of knowledge, and we just want to restrict it to the fundamentals of the mind in this particular case. But thank you, brother. Sister Tina, iPhone is Tina. I'm presuming this is Sister Tina.
iPhone.
Oh, is it still saying iPhone? Oh, I got to keep changing it every time.
Oh, it's
Okay.
all right, sister. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to make sure I have a good understanding of lock. So I develop a word family, and I want to know if it's if it's correct. Lock. In the word family, I put lock, key in, remind, and stimulate.
That's right.
Okay, so that's a good
Re-stimulate.
Okay,
Right.
so that's a good word family.
Right. I think so.
Okay, so that helps me understand lock better. Okay, thank you.
All right. Sister Annie.
Yes, sir. Well, like some people say about being totally transparent, I notice that whenever the subject of locks and secondaries comes up, there's always a lot of questions about, the meaning, and it seems like it's a place where we've gotten hung up of not really clearly understanding the subject. And I, for one, I have to, like I say, be totally transparent. I sat up here and went to sleep. I did. So I know that there's something here that I really have not grasped when it comes to locks and secondaries. So
yeah, which
I don't know what that is.
which is the main reason that I wanted to bring it back up, so that we can understand auditing. Because if you don't understand locks and secondaries, I think that you are very limited in your ability to audit somebody. If you don't really understand locks and secondaries. So, but it is very simple. A lock is just an analytical moment that reminds you of contents of an engram or a secondary. That's really all it is. A secondary or painful emotion engram is just when you have a loss or a painful emotion. You know, it's a heavier facsimile. You know, it weighs on you a little bit more. You know, I lost something, so it's, you feel the loss you used to having it. Now it's gone. You feel it. That's the secondary, and then the engram, that's a heavy facsimile. And the reason they call it heavy facsimile is because it contains some kind of pain or some kind of unconsciousness. So, and that's really all it is. Okay, so you go right here. When you go right here to this, and I know we going off, but I guess we can go over every once in a while. You got at the top, you got analytical mind, your thinking mind, and then right below that, and what I've got these gradients of colors here to signify the I guess the weight of the thoughts. Where you got the analytical mind, the thinking mind, you got just your regular subconscious memory. What did you eat for breakfast this morning? And then you got locks, is when you see something that just takes you. Your mind is here, but your body what does the song say? So your body is here, but your mind is on the other side of time. And that's that old song by the OJs. There's a country rock song called "Still in Saigon." The guy said he's still in Saigon. His mind is still in Saigon. Maybe that's not the best. I'll put it like this. See, a lock would be you go down, say you go downtown Atlanta on Peachtree Street, and then you cross the street, and then you get hit by a car. All right. So 10 years later, you come down Peachtree Street, and then you cross that same street, and then you hit you don't get hit by the car, but you feel it. It keys you in to that heavy facsimile that you experienced 10 years ago. That's what a lock is. And then, that's all it is. That's all it is. It's just something that keys you in. All right. And then the secondary is mainly when you have a loss or a painful emotion engram. And then we address all of these things in book 1. So that's all it is. It's a loss, or it's the fear of a loss. All right. So now you can go deeper into that, but those are just the basic simple meaning. These are simple meanings. It's not complicated. And that's what I was saying to Brother Wadu. Even the thing about the brain, all of that stuff is what he's saying is true, but it ain't really got nothing to do with what the secondary is for the purposes of auditing. For the purposes of auditing, the only thing you really need to know and understand is that when you lose something, it does something to your mind. Your mind stores and it channels this experience to a certain part in your subconscious mind. When you have an engram, when somebody hits you upside the head with a bat or slap you or whatever, anything that's got pain, then that's the reason I got it in black. That's the heaviest facsimile. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to understand it for the purpose of understanding what auditing is. All right. So you see on your left hand, you got subconscious mind. So you got just your regular memory. Engrams are part of your subconscious mind. Locks, secondaries, and engrams are part of your reactive mind, which are part of your subconscious mind. But then you do have other aspects of your subconscious mind, which is just your standard memory banks. So I don't know. Does that make sense? Is that not clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir, that's clear.
yeah, I just, you know. So anyway, we 15 minutes over, and but I'm not gonna trip on that. Are there any questions before we leave this?
I have a question, Brother Martin. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, brother.
The reason why I left these therapists alone because they really wasn't helping. I didn't know why, but they really wasn't helping. And you know, the devil's limited way of dealing with things is that if you're afraid of snakes, they'll just bring a snake in a room and tell you keep rubbing on it till it don't bother you anymore. And for us who have to deal with repeated things that you don't really have any control over, that can bring back this scenario that we just talking about. I don't know the language enough. I might mess it up saying it. But if you don't have control over those, the things that stimulate you towards an engram, a painful emotion, is there any way you can control that? Any way you can control that so that you can tell your mind that, hey, that there's nothing to get excited about.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to just rephrase that one more time, brother.
Be honest with you, I live in the close proximity of autistic person in the household.
Okay.
And they do things that stimulate me towards painful engrams. They absolutely have no control over it. That they're not even aware of what they do, the effect that it has on anybody. If you explain it to them, you wasting your time. They can't grasp it. There's no way they could grasp it.
Okay.
So I'm just asking, and I'm not ashamed to ask in front of my family. How can you? How would you deal with that? Or that's some question I need to call you later on after we close this session out.
Well, I would just ask Allah to give me the best perspective or his perspective. And realize that it may take, I don't see any instant fix for that.
Right.
According to what I know, except for just asking Allah to put a hedge between you, and whatever re-stimulation that may come as a result of being in that environment. And basically what I would do, I would just use the prayer of refuge. I seek refuge in Allah from anxiety and grief, lack of strength and laziness. And that could be a lack of strength to not be able to tolerate or to deal with that. Ask Allah. I seek refuge in Allah. And then and what I'm beginning to do now, I seek refuge in Allah through the minister and the messenger. Bring them in, because these are examples. These are unit facsimiles that you have that can be useful. These are weapons. Farrakhan is a weapon that can be used in spiritual warfare.
Yes, sir. I
So,
had that thought. I had that thought.
yeah,
What you
yeah.
just
So
said.
that's, I mean, that you know, that's what comes to mind for me. You know, we can talk about it a little bit later if you want to call me later on, or you know, we can talk and we can just kind of brainstorm on some things that we could possibly come up with.
Yes, sir.
But I think any of this stuff is very simple. I think the answers are simple. It's just implementing the answers sometimes are a little bit harder than they seem. And I remember it was a brother that was working with Dr. Aleem, and Brother Michael, he used to say, all of that stuff is easy when it's in your head. But when you start trying to implement it, that's when you start seeing the reality of it. And that's what it is. See, the idea starts at emotional tone 40. But when you want to implement it, then you have to come down. Your tone level is cut in half, because now you are engaging in the physical universe or the real world. And so that's what I always say. And that's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told Mother Tanetta. He said, seek refuge in Allah. And see, this still, in my opinion, still has to be our number one tool. You know, our number one tool has to be seek refuge in Allah. Now, when we study the technology of Mr. Hubbard, then it gives us greater insight as to how we can use the tool. It breaks down the tool for us so that we can, rely on certain aspects of the tool that may be most applicable to that which we are trying to address. But we always come back to I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. And so I'm like, I seek refuge in Allah through the minister and the messenger. That's what I'm saying, because when I bring them in, then now I got Allah and what they say is two that's backing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It's three that's backing us. We got him, Allah, and the messenger. So when we invoke those names, it makes a difference. Just like as we were saying earlier, maybe a couple of months or so, we were talking about making sure when we say Allah, that we don't slip back up into thinking about some mystery that does not exist, that we attach the image, the picture, the mental image picture of Master Farad Muhammad. So to the term Allah, when you say Allah, you speaking of Master Farad Muhammad, because out of habit for all of these trillions of years, when we said Allah, we don't nothing come up. And then how so many times we'll say these prayers. We'll say the whole opening prayer. We ain't thought about Master Farad Muhammad one time, but we talking about Allah the whole while. And so we are at that point now where we are making that pivot, where we are directing our attention. So I hope that helps, brother.
Yes, sir. That helped.
Yes, sir. Before we leave, we almost at 2:30. So anybody got any questions or comments before we leave? We're getting ready to close it on down. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation. Again, inshallah, we'll be back on Thursday And are there any, I know we got Belinda, myself, and Sister Jacqueline are auditors. Do we have any other auditors on the line?
Yes, sir.
You're an auditor, Sister Carol?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I know there is
And I want to say thank you so much.
oh, praise be to Allah. Praise be
Mhm.
to Allah. And I guess we will, I don't know if we can, if you're not in the southern region, you may not be able. Are you in the southern region, Sister Carol?
Mid-Atlantic.
Mid-Atlantic, okay.
Mhm.
So you may, yeah. But we're going to try to, Brother Malik, used to be Brother Tony, is going to be giving some Dianetic training this evening. And I certainly wouldn't mind sharing the link, but might get in trouble if I did. But I'm gonna do we have your email address, Sister Carol?
So Lukman has it, yes, sir.
Well, can you put it in the chat that if we can share this link with you, we will.
I'm putting it in the chat.
right.
Praise be to God.
All right. All praise due to Allah. All right, then. Well, that's going to do it for today by Allah. And I hope that everyone has enjoyed it as much as I have. And I pray Allah's forgiveness for any mistakes or mistakes that might have been made. If I said anything that offended anybody, I certainly was not my intention. The intention is to do good. And may Allah bless us all with the light of understanding. And we will close out in prayer now. Attention, prayer. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, all praises are due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the beneficent, the merciful, master of this day of judgment in which we now live. The alone that we serve, the alone that we beseech for aid. Guide us on the right path, the path you have bestowed favors, not of those whom your wrath has brought down, nor those who go astray. Amen. All right, brothers and sisters, go in peace. Inshallah, we will, STW will be back on Thursday, 10 a.m. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
salam,
salam.
sir.